Hi folks, welcome to RJA Impact. Elizabeth Holmes is back in court again. This is probably, possibly, maybe, sort of, perhaps, fit your own word in, her last chance for any significant further time on the outside. This is because the former Theranos CEO Holmes on Friday made what might be her final court appearance before beginning her 11-year prison sentence. So what's she doing back again? Well, her lawyers on her behalf are continuing to make the case for her to remain free while they appeal her conviction. That conviction, as a reminder, was for fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud, 4 of the 12 counts she was originally charged with. The frauds were for deception against investors, from whom she took nearly $1 billion in total, and that was for lies and misrepresentations about the efficacy of Theranos' proprietary blood testing device, the Edison, as well as forging documents purporting to be from large pharma, praising the company, lies about the company's financial prospects and contracts with the military, amongst other things. In simple terms, being the mastermind of a blood testing swindle. It's now another 4 months since her sentencing hearing when Judge Edward Davila gave her an 11-year sentence, and this time the whole process lasted about an hour and a half. Just as things were getting going, there was apparently some drama in court. A man approached, or tried to approach, her table after she'd sat down, and he had some kind of document in his hand, according to witnesses. Who he was and what he was trying to do is a mystery, and he was essentially tackled by security guards who unceremoniously kicked him out. So what went on, and what was the outcome of this 90-minute hearing? Well, wouldn't you know it, we didn't have one. We got somewhere closer to the inevitable, as Davila did say he'd have a decision by early April. And as a reminder, Holmes' current reporting date for incarceration is April the 27th. Now, Holmes is making a similar bid for freedom as her former love interest, Sunny Balwani, did last week. His bid was rejected, and he was due to hand himself in on the 16th of March, but he managed to avoid incarceration with a last-ditch appeal by his lawyers, and that itself triggered a stay for him. And in court, well, I had actually a little more time to look at some of the tweets and comments that were made on the day than I normally do, and saw some longer press reports over the weekend as a result. One of the things I observed in doing that was Holmes herself was known back in the day, as many of you will know, for her style with the turtlenecks emulating Steve Jobs, and was happy to pose for stylish magazine covers. And even a lot more of the serious press would often comment about her look and appearance before getting into the meat of their article. Now, it seems to me, reviewing this slightly wider coverage as I have, this tendency to focus on style over substance really hasn't waned much in the intervening years. You don't get that here, do you? So let's get to it. Here is Elizabeth attending court on a sunny day in San Jose, wearing a sharp black blazer, a blue skirt and heels. In court, like I said, it was brief. Amy Saharia, one of Holmes' lawyers, argued that she should be allowed to remain free because of various missteps in the presentation and omission of evidence during the 4-month trial. The conclusion she asked the court to make was that it was therefore likely an appeals court will overturn her conviction on the 4 counts of fraud and conspiracy. "We think the record is teeming with issues," she said. For example, there was the deposition that Balwani gave to the SEC, which, interestingly enough, I think as an aside, I believe is still pending appeal by Balwani, and I think that process was stalled while the criminal prosecutions proceeded. Anyway, Davila had said it couldn't be brought into evidence by Holmes' defence, and Saharia said that if it had, she would have been exonerated. And as another aside, I'll just point out the obvious again, that Davila is making judgments on his own previous rulings, which, as I pointed out in the Balwani hearing, is going to lean towards Davila siding with his own rulings, unless something rather obvious was overlooked. Now, to me, it is a pity that this wasn't recorded, as the defence must have to do a pretty sharp tap dance in court, because ultimately they're saying to Davila that you didn't do a very good job, and as a result our innocent client is going to prison. The tiptoeing around that elephant in the room must be pretty interesting to watch. Yep, you got it. Tap dancing, tiptoeing and elephants all in court. Who'd have thought it? Kelly Volkar, for the prosecution countering, said there would be no likelihood for a reversal of Holmes' conviction, and she listed 7 categories of deception that Holmes got up to or engaged in whilst she was running Theranos. She focused on some of the more public boasts that Holmes had made, particularly regarding the Edison, the hundreds of diseases scanned and health problems analysed with the now infamous a finger prick drop of blood. And as we know, it was so bad, the Edison, that essentially it was never used in any material way for patients. About this and the fact that she'd used other proprietary third-party testing equipment to actually do the tests was shocking to investors, Volker emphasised. As a result, Theranos began relying on third-party testing equipment already widely used in the market, and this was a switch that Holmes concealed in an effort to keep the company afloat. Again, that was shocking to investors, Volker reminded Davila. We did have a first real discussion on the restitution, something that has been a source of some speculation over the past year since Holmes' conviction. Now, just to get this in context, in case you weren't aware, Holmes once had Theranos valued at $9 billion, and as she owned half, was lauded to be one of the youngest self-made billionaires with a wealth of $4.5 billion. Having reminded us of this, Robert Leach went straight for the top line. To remind you, there were approximately $900 million collected from investors in all of the investor rounds, and he said the conviction and the fact that Holmes engineered it had justified a $900 million of restitution. Just to apply common sense, the money these investors lost is the money they put in, said Leach. Holmes' lawyer Patrick Luby said the prosecutors were way off. The jury in her trial couldn't reach a verdict on 3 counts of investor fraud, prompting the prosecutor to actually dismiss those charges. At most, Luby contended Holmes' restitution penalty should be limited to the handful of investors who testified during her trial. So there we are. I think the numbers that related purely to the investors in the indictment she was found guilty of relate to PFM's Brian Grossman, the DeVos family, and attorney Dan Mosley, Alan Eisman, Black Diamond's Chris Lucas, and the Hall Group's Brian Talbot. That then covers all of them because of the conspiracy element of the fraud, but the actual 3 that she was convicted of had in total invested $144 million. There we have it. The identifiable, if we'll put it that way, money is $144 million. If you think there is conspiracy as well, then it obviously becomes higher than that, but a number that you can't actually tangibly identify. So we're dealing with restitution, of course, here, and there will be fines to add to this as well, but there was no significant talk over the size and or applicability of fines in the meeting last week. I know you want me to give you a number or range that I think the restitution will eventually come in at, and so I will. My best estimate, having worn out a couple of pencils and my best calculator, is that the restitution will be more than 144 million, but less than 900 million. I think you'll agree I've got it into a very tight range there. And so as my cartoon hand of subscription moves across the page, if you could race it and beat it to the real one, I would be hugely grateful. A little observation for you to ponder. If Elizabeth Holmes had gone into jail almost straight away after her conviction, then taking into account a 15% reduction in time served for good behaviour, by now she would have served well over 10% of her sentence. Something that she can still look forward to, therefore. Bye for now.